Hello everyone and welcome. So in this video we're going to draw a Christmas bauble using coloured pencils, and this is a bit more complicated than the previous autumn tutorial series that I posted, where we were really focusing on simplicity, speed and keeping things really basic so that we could learn the fundamentals of drawing in coloured pencils without overcomplicating it. But we are going to turn it up a notch in this video because drawing shiny objects is a little more complex. There's all sorts of different shapes that are reflecting off of this subject. This is going to be a test of observation skills, picking out all of the different shapes, drawing what you actually see, not what you think you can see. So I'm still going to try and keep it as simple and easy to follow as possible, but in this video we're focusing more on detail and really taking our time to build up all of those different shapes and details that are reflected in the bauble. So a nice little festive tutorial for you, something that you can work on over the Christmas period to get a little bit more in the Christmas spirit. So for this tutorial I am using my sketchbook. This is a really basic old sketchbook that I've had for ages. It's by Ochre and it's 150 GSM cartridge paper, so it's really nothing special at all. I'm not using any fancy watercolour paper or anything like that. I usually draw on hot pressed watercolour paper for my commissions and original art, but for this is just a fun drawing to do in my sketchbook. I'm also going to try my best to use just Faber-Castell Polychromos, which is my favourite pencil brand. I use them for all of my professional work. If you do want to get more into coloured pencils, I can highly recommend them. Please don't feel pressured to use the exact same thing as me, just use whatever you've got. If you need to go out and buy anything, just get whatever it is within your budget. What I'll do is every time I use a new colour I'll put a swatch on the screen so that you can find a colour in whatever brand you've got as close to the one that I'm using as possible. So for this tutorial I have used tracing paper to trace out my outline. I have a whole video on how I use tracing paper which I will link below if you want to go and give that a watch. But it just speeds the process up. It means that all of your proportions are correct, and when you're focusing on a really detailed subject like this and you want it to look realistic, there is no shame in using tracing paper. But if you do want to challenge yourself, feel free to go ahead and map this all out freehand. But I will also link the line drawing in the description where you can download it and either print it out or open it on a tablet and trace over it. So everything you need to know will be in the description of this video, all of the colours that I'm using. Please do make sure to check that out. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm using a different camera and the microphone that comes with it for this video, so I'm really hoping that the quality is better. Do let me know what you think of the quality. I'm really hoping that it's better, trying to improve it. So let's have a look at this. I feel like first things first, I might start with the ribbon and the little metal bit at the top of the bauble. So the ribbon has a little bit more of an orange tone. The hoop and the top of the bauble are a bit more golden and yellow, so I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm choosing my colours. First things first, a super sharp pencil is going to be best for this. It's very intricate and delicate, so sharp pencil is best. I think what we'll do is we'll start out with some Nougat 178, which is nice mid-brown colour. I can definitely see some browns in the details of the ribbon and the gold areas. So I think what we'll do, we'll map out some of the little details that I can see with this colour. So let's start from the top here. I'm just using my putty eraser to dab away the original graphite outlines so that I can just see them. And let's just do these two bits first, so the ribbon and the hoop. And the biggest tip that I can give for drawing shiny surfaces is to make sure that the values are right. So you want the contrast between these really dark bits and the lighter areas where the light is reflecting off. So on this ribbon there's a darker bit on the inside of the ribbon on that right hand strand that goes up there. So I'm just going to add a little bit really lightly. You want to use a light hand for this, just going up the inside. And then going to do another one on the right hand side. So just adding a little bit of a guideline as to where everything is. I'm barely touching the paper. I'm going to bring that all the way up because I can see a darker colour all the way up that right hand side. Might actually just zoom you in a little bit. And then there's also a really dark bit at the top here. I'm going to bring that down. Really lightly just go down that left hand edge. And then there's a darker bit that comes down sort of through the middle there and then onto the right hand edge of the ribbon. Just like that. And then there's a darker bit just going through the centre at the bottom. A little bit of a shadow. And let's just make sure that's all joined up. And I might just add a tiny bit at the top there. And then you can't really see much of an outline underneath that white bit there. I might just add a little bit just so that we can see where that ends. So I've not applied a lot of pressure at all, very, very light pressure, just so that we can get everything in place. It's much easier to erase mistakes if you're light, and it just means that you can build up more layers. This paper doesn't allow as many layers as my usual hot pressed watercolour paper, so I do have to be careful not to press on too hard. I've really trained myself over the years to have a lighter hand anyway, so the lighter the better for this. Right, we are going to carry on with this little metal hoop. And again, I'm looking for the darker areas. So again, like I said, this is really all about your observation skills and what you can pick out from a reference. So just gonna go around the edge here. You can see there's definitely a darker bit. And then I'm just gonna bring that round a little bit more. Then there's a darker line that sort of starts from the inside at the bottom there, but it comes more through the middle. Then I'm just going to do a little light line just to show where the inside of that hoop is. And then on this left side there's a really dark bit that I can see at the top, so just going to draw it on the inside. And then let's just do a little bit on the outside of the hoop as well, really lightly. The thing is, we're being so light here that it doesn't really matter if we add a little bit too much. And it'll be helpful for when we add our lighter colours inside, just to have that guideline to begin with. Okay, let's start now on this little bit that connects to the top of the bauble. So just dabbing that outline away again a little bit. If you don't have one of these putty erasers, I'd definitely recommend getting one because you don't get all those annoying little bits that come off erasers, and it damages your paper a little bit when you have to rub really hard, whereas with this you can just dab it, and because it's got a bit of a sticky texture to it, it lifts the graphite off really easily. This one's from Faber-Castell and you can mould it into whatever shape you want, so definitely recommend grabbing yourself one of those. Okay, I can just about see enough detail there. Sticking with that Nougat 178, so the brown colour, just going to add the little shapes that I can see in the bottom of this. So these little scallop shapes. Really lightly just adding those in, and if you do struggle to use a light hand, hold your pencil way higher up. I'm holding it like here, I'm not holding it like that, holding it like that. got a lot more freedom to move and to not apply too much pressure. So again, there's a little bit of a scallop shape there. Then I'm going to start to add a little bit of detail into the rest of this little hat on the bauble. Going to add a little bit of a bottom to that hoop actually, and this is where it really is about what you can see and not what you think you can see. So here I can see some little details in the pattern, so some little lines that come in like this sort of shape, and they're much stronger in this area than they are in the rest of the bauble because of the way the light's hitting it. So I'm only going to pick out those for now. We might pick out a few lighter little bits, but that's the main area that I can see. I always tend to focus on the darker bits first before moving on to the lighter bits. And then there's like a little bit in the middle, like a little rounded shape like that, rounded rectangle. And then there's another 4 lines at the bottom. Like that. Let's just do a little end to the top bit there. And then it's definitely darker at the top as well, so I'm going to add a little bit of a wobbly line to the top. I'm not trying to do a super straight line, just like that. And then it sort of ends there. It's a bit lighter on this right hand side here, so just mostly focus that there. Add a little bit of detail just at the top. Then I am just going to add these few little bits of detail that I can see here. So a little line coming down like that. A few little bits in there. Take your time, you don't need to rush through this. Just pick out what you can see. There's a little bit there. Some little dots, very, very minimal. And then there is some little like rounded shapes on this left hand side and this right hand side, but they're very subtle because of the way the light's catching it. So I'm going to add the tiniest little bit just where the darkest part of that is. So just focusing it there. There's a bit of a gap in the circle there. Just there. Then on this one, it's very, very light. So I'm going to add a really subtle hint of that circle there. Nothing much. I'm literally just touching the paper. And the beauty of using your putty eraser is, if you go too dark, you can just lift it a tiny bit. So it's super subtle. So like I said, this drawing is all about being delicate, intricate, focusing on detail and not rushing your way through it. That is how you're going to make it look realistic and really detailed. I might even lighten up those bits a tiny bit. Honestly, your putty eraser is your best friend when you're drawing in coloured pencils. Cannot recommend them highly enough. Okay, gonna add that little line that I can see there. And again, you can only see a few of the details in the pattern here, so just going to add a few. Then there's a little bit that just comes across there, and it just comes down there a little bit. Right, I think that is enough. Less is more, we don't want to add too much. So now let's start to add a little bit of colour in here. So like I said, it's a bit more orange toned at the top. It's got more of a red orange undertone. A lot of the time with reds and oranges, there is a bit of a pink undertone as well. And when I'm drawing in coloured pencils, I always layer up from a lighter colour to the darkest colour, adding lots and lots of layers on top, gradually getting darker and darker. Looking at this reference, I'm picking out the lightest colour that I can see, and it looks a little bit like a peachy pink colour. So I am going to use my Beige Red 132 as a base for this little ribbony bit. So any pink colour that you've got, if it's leaning a little bit more peach, then great, but if not, don't worry. So I'm going to use this again quite lightly and with a sharp pencil, and I'm just going to apply that really softly to the lighter areas of the pink colour that I can see. But like I said, it's all about the values and making sure that you get the light bits light and the dark bits dark when you're drawing shiny objects. So I'm going to leave a little gap there. Can you see where it's a bit more white? I'm just going to really softly fade that out into nothing, taking my pencil off lighter and lighter as I get towards the white area. And then I'm going to start again here where it's a little bit darker again. And then getting lighter and lighter as I get to the white bit, then focusing a little bit more colour where it's darker. So it's very subtle. It's all these subtle nuances that make something look realistic. So I'm just leaving it a bit whiter on that bottom right edge as well. Okay, and then looking at this bit, it's a little bit darker at the bottom. And a bit darker at the top here in between these two bits. And then there's a tiny bit at the top there, but the bottom of this bit is white. There we go. So can you see how that already looks a little bit more realistic? So I think we could add yet another colour into this. So I'm going to use Sanguine 188, which is a bit of a rusty orange pink colour. It's got a bit of brown, pink, orange. So it is a bit of an unusual colour. If you don't have this, then just use the closest that you can find. I'm adding this on top, again with a light hand, a sharp pencil, and creating even more of a gradient between those lighter bits and the darker bits. So just focusing it where everything's a little bit darker. I do love this colour, it's a really interesting colour. And I would love to use it more. Blend a little bit in there. A little bit on the inside there. As soon as you start adding slightly darker colours, the light bits look really light and you might end up needing to add a bit more to tone it down. But it's so much easier to keep adding than it is to try and take away. So I always work up really, really gradually. Just adding a little bit on the edges there. So keep looking at that reference. It's all about observation. The only way you can observe something is to actually look at it. So keep looking back. Keep seeing where all these subtle different areas are. Adding a little bit there. So that is looking a lot better already. We definitely need to add some more browns back in to add a little bit more depth. I might even be tempted to add a little bit more Beige Red 132 back into it to tone down those white areas a little bit more. They can look a bit strong once you've added some darker colours, so just toning those down a bit. Okay, then let's go back to our Nougat 178. I think we will need a darker brown, but let's add a little bit of this first. So our mid-brown colour, and I'm just going back in and adding a bit more brown anywhere that needs it. We might not even need a darker brown, we'll see though. It does look quite dark here at the top of this ribbon. A little bit there. A little bit on that right hand side, and there's a bit of a line that comes across there. I'll just add that in. A little bit more down there, still being super light. A little bit here. A little bit there. A A little bit on that right hand edge. Okay, that is looking better. I think what we'll do now is we'll start on the gold hoop. It definitely has more of a yellow undertone, so I'm going to look for a yellow colour. And I'm going to start with the Ivory 103, which is a really pale yellow colour. So anything that you've got that's the lightest yellow you can find. I'm going to use this pretty much all over the hoop and the top of the bauble. So just blending that in to get a bit of a yellow undertone. Still being light. I don't think there's any pure white areas in this, so pretty confident just going in and adding this over the whole thing. So don't press too hard because we want to add plenty of layers on top. You don't want it to go all shiny and hit the limit too quick, because coloured pencils are all about the layers. Just blending that in. There we go, so that's already got a nice yellow undertone. Okay, so to start darkening this up and add a bit more of a vibrant tone, I'm going to use the dark Naples Ochre 184, and I did use this in my autumn tutorials. I try my best to use as many of the same colours as possible so that if you are purchasing these individually, you can reuse the same colours. So there's a combination of lots of different colours that will probably work for this, but I'm just choosing one combination. There's probably so many different colours you could use for this, so don't worry too much if you don't have this exact colour. But like we did with the ribbon, I'm using this to start picking out the slightly darker areas, the bit that you can see with more of a yellow orange tone. It's quite an orange toned yellow, this. It's got lovely warmth to it. So just blending that in there a bit, a little bit here. But I'm leaving it lighter there where the light's reflecting on it. Blending a bit there. And then it's pretty yellow all down this bit here where it's more detailed. It's got more of a gold colour to it. So focusing quite a bit of that there, a little bit there, quite a bit at the top as well, the top of the hat on the bauble. I'm going to blend it down a little bit, just there. It's a very, very dull grey day today, so I'm hoping the lighting looks alright on this video. It just feels like it's not got light today at all. It gets like that a lot in winter anyway, in the UK. Gets light for about an hour or two and then it's like, right, back to being dark and gloomy. Just going to add a little bit here as well. Do you know what though? I love drawing when it's all cosy. You don't have anywhere to be or anywhere that you want to be. You can just enjoy being inside with the sound of the rain on the windows. Just going to bring this here a little bit as well. There's a few more details that I've not added, but we could always add them. A few little bits there. That already looks a lot more golden. Just going to really lightly just add a little bit around here, just to give it a subtle bit of colour. A bit on that right hand side. Might even just add the tiniest bit. There we go. Still feel like we could add a little bit more of an orange tone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the Sanguine 188 and I'm going to blend a little bit of that into this gold area as well. If you look really closely, there's like some subtle orange pink tones, like just around here. I'm going to really gently blend that in. And I also like to use some of the same colours to bring these areas together so that they don't look like two completely separate things. It's all part of the same drawing. So using a few of the same colours in different places, it can really help to make the drawing look more cohesive, even if it's just a subtle little touch. So really gently just blending that in, and because we're blending it on top of the yellow tones, it gives it a bit of a different look anyway. It's all about the combination that you're using. It can look different depending on what colours are next to it or underneath it. So it is a little bit of a minefield learning what colours go together and how it all works, but the only way to really get to know is to practice and try as many different subjects as possible, different colours, different colour combinations. And if you do struggle to remember, maybe just keep a little notebook of what colours work well for what. It's always good to have a little bit of a record, see what works. I'm just going to blend this down here, build up a bit more that warm orange colour. A little bit here. Really doesn't feel like Christmas to me. It's just gone so fast this year. I just can't believe it's December already. But doing a little bit of festive drawing, it does help it to feel more like Christmas. And it's also something nice to do in that week between Christmas and New Year where you don't know what day it is or time it is. It's that no man's land where you don't have a clue what's going on. Just blend in a little bit of that up there and there, just to add a bit of subtle detail. Just looking for any extra little bits that I need to add. We definitely need some more brown in this. Might even just blend a little bit more into that ribbon if need be. There we go, that's looking good. Let's go back to our Nougat 178 again and start to darken this up. So again, I'm just looking for any darker bits, going back in, adding another layer, a few extra little details. It took me years and years to be able to draw things like this well. They're so fiddly and detailed, but when you really break it down and do it bit by bit, it is manageable. Like I said, you've just got to figure out how to observe what you're seeing, put it into a drawing. Bit of a darker bit there. And a lot of the time it's very subtle. There's only some tiny differences between all of the colours. You're not trying to be super high contrast. It's just these subtle differences in the values that make it look realistic. And also being able to maintain the shape and not make the hoop look like it's a really weird oval shape or, you know, the wrong perspective. A lot of it is just being able to get things the right shape, the right value. And that's a lot of what drawing in coloured pencils is really, well, drawing in anything. Which is why for this one I think using the tracing method is very helpful, because getting these wrong can make it look very weird very quickly. So I'm going to now bring this across here, the top of this little connecting bit. Darkening that up a tad. I think that's already starting to look so much better. And it looks a little bit more shiny already. So, it's going in here, darkening these little lines up a tad. But I'm just sort of like blending around them a little bit so that I can add a bit more shape. So that it's not just a solid line, it's like a line but with a little bit of shading and shadowing around it. And then same at the bottom. Blend a little bit there. Just a few little details that I can see. Just blending in a little bit, still being so light. You really don't need to press on hard for this. I'm going to blend a bit more around these lines just to create a bit more shape. Might do a bit more of a line there. That looks much more golden already. It's the combination of those yellows and browns, a little bit of an orange tone, but then keeping those lighter areas to look like it's reflecting. Less is definitely more. I will never stop saying that because it's so true. Okay, let's just go around these bottom bits a tiny bit more just to darken those up a little bit. And I'm just going to go around these little circles a tiny bit more. Oh, okay. And then I think we could get away with a slightly darker brown, because at the minute it looks good, but it still looks a tiny bit flat if you ask me. So another layer of depth I think will really make these areas stand out. So I'm going to use the burnt umber 280, another colour that I used in the autumn tutorials. Use this colour so much. It's just a dark brown with a slightly warm undertone, which will be perfect for this. I'm gonna go in here, just darken that up a little bit. Do you see how it's a bit darker there? I feel like it just needs that little bit more depth. That looks better already. And it needs a little bit more depth here. It's like a darker area at the top of that hoop. And a little bit of a darker bit in that ribbon. It's a little bit of a Y shape, but it's upside down, so that's the bottom of the Y. And then it splits off into two there. And then it needs to be a little bit darker, just there. There's like a little line coming across there. I'm not really sure how much that adds to the drawing, but we'll do it because it's there on the reference. And then it needs to be a little bit darker on the inside of this hoop. But again, I'm not pressing hard here, I'm pressing lightly. We just want that subtle touch with the pencil, that it doesn't go too dark. We can blend it in really softly. A little bit here. Anywhere that you can see that it's a little bit darker. I might do a few bits at the top of this little hat. And then definitely a few little bits in here. Some of these lines could do with being a tad darker. And I'm also just going to blend a little bit more in. A little bit under there. Gonna go around these little scallops at the bottom. We'll be adding some red in between those, but I think if we just darken it up a little bit, adds a little bit more depth. That looks so much better already. Can you see how that already just looks so much more realistic, having that extra bit of depth? So sometimes if your drawings are looking a little bit flat, you might just need that extra layer of depth to darken up those values, really make them stand out. Could always come back to this at any point if we feel like we need to darken it up a bit more. A little bit more just in those. Right, we could spend a lifetime on that top bit, but I think that looks pretty good. And sometimes you can add a little bit less detail than you actually see, but I think we've done well there. We've added quite a bit of detail really. So let's move on to the bauble itself and start to pick out some details. So like we did with this top area, I think we'll start with like a mid-tone red colour. It's pretty obvious that the main colour we can see is red. So I'm going to start with the middle cadmium red 217, and I'm going to use this to gradually start lifting off the outline and replacing it with this red. As I said, it's a lot of detail to pick out. Reflective objects, they reflect everything that's in the space around them. So you can see some bits of the Christmas tree branch there, somebody's hand there that's holding a phone or camera, whatever it is. You've got all these like little bits of furniture that are around the room, and it all sort of comes out from the centre. It's a little bit complicated when you try and think of all these things together, but if you do it bit by bit and just look for what the shapes are that you can see in each area, build up as much detail as you can, but don't worry about getting every little bit in. That is the only way that you can do it without losing your mind. Luckily for us, drawing something like this is actually so much more forgiving than you would expect. It's not like we're drawing an animal and the eyes need to be exactly right to create likeness, or like we're drawing a leaf where everything needs to be perfectly symmetrical or anything like that. Whoever's looking at your drawing isn't going to be comparing all of the details in the reflections to the reference. No one knows what these reflections actually look like. So as long as they look somewhat in the right place and you've got a bit of variety and, you know, these highlights are in the right place and you've got some depth in there, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit different to the reference. So take away any pressure that you're putting on yourself and just break it down into tiny parts and do your best. If you can pick out shapes from this bauble, then you can pick out shapes from anything, trust me. So let's see, where do we start? Do you know what? I'm going to stick with my advice that I always give and start with the darkest parts. So the darkest bit that I can see is definitely this bit in the middle. Tap the lines away because I don't want any graphite showing through. And I'm just going to take it bit by bit, one little step at a time. Doing a bit of a line down there. And I'll add a slightly darker bit here. Doing my best to pick out any little details that I can see, but I'm not worrying too much about getting every single little bit in, as long as we've got the general shape. So I'm going to bring this down there a little bit. There's definitely like a bit of a triangle that I can see there. Then a bit of a weird circle just there, just above the hand. And I'm going to do my best to get this little hand in, but I'm not going to worry too much about it being perfect. So it comes across like that. Just drawing all little shapes. Pick it out one little bit at a time. And again, you want to be light, you don't want to press too hard for this, because if you do make any mistakes or you want to just change it a little bit, you can do more easily. What I find is sometimes I'll draw something bigger than it actually is, or I'll draw it smaller than it actually is, but like I said, it's not the end of the world with this. You can be quite confident in the fact it's going to look all right no matter what. So just go for it, don't be afraid of all these intricate details. What's the worst that could happen? It goes a little bit funny and you start again, or it's just not quite as perfect as you hoped. Doesn't really matter, it's all good practice. And you're going to come away feeling much more confident at how to observe objects. So there's a darker bit just there. And then there's like a bit of an orange glow on the edge of the bauble, and that's what's going to also help to make it look really reflective, like it's got that nice warm glow from all of the Christmas lights. So I think what I will do is I will add a little soft outline just on the edge, but I mean really soft, I'm not pressing hard. So we've got that little band of light in between the edge and all of the little details in the bauble. So that's going to be similar all around, but it's more obvious where the light's hitting it, like here and round here, a bit at the top there and stuff. It's not all the way around. The bottom left is a little bit darker, but you can still see a little bit of a lighter glow around the edge. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind. Going to draw around this little highlight here. So now that we've started from this dark bit, we've got a little anchor point that we can work around and just gradually start working our way around the rest of the details. So there's all sorts of stuff going on in here, but I'm just going to add a few little bits of detail, nothing as crazy as the reference. So it comes around here a little bit. That'll do. Let's start going up here. And this is also where having that traced outline helps to see what you're doing more clearly. Imagine trying to pick this all out yourself from scratch. It would take you a lifetime just to do the outline. And I don't know about you, but I haven't got that long. I just want to get stuck in with the colour onto the fun bit, so yeah, we'd end up having like a 3-hour video with me just explaining how to do the outline with this. So let's use the tools that we have available to us and make our lives a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. Even the great Leonardo da Vinci used to use a camera obscura to trace, and he is one of the most well-known, commendable artists in the world, so take a leaf out of his book. If you're drawing something really precise that needs to be proportionally correct, then there's no harm using a method to help you. So like I said, I'm just gradually working my way around this. I'm picking out the details that I can see. And there's nothing to stop us adding more when we've added our base colour in, but for now, we just want enough that we can get started. Okay, so I'm going to go around these little branches, but again, I'm not going to add as much detail as is in the reference. But I can add the general shape and direction of all these little branches, little bits that are coming off the tree. I have a friend who is an artist who you've probably already seen, called Hannah Lipsey, and she is the queen of drawing shiny things. So if you need some inspiration, go and have a look at her work, it's incredible. She draws shiny objects and she's amazing. She always has a little reflection of herself in them. Now that is next level, that is like super detailed work, but we're just focusing on something a little bit smaller here. Not worrying too much about all the details and getting them spot on. But yeah, she is well worth having a look at if you haven't seen her work already. She is unbelievable. Okie dokie. Just going to go around the edge of the bauble there, just to get that shape. Again, there's like a bit of an orange glow inside it as well. Let's go around the whole edge while we're here. Because you're being quite light, if you don't quite get the rounded shape spot on, you can use your eraser and have a little bit of a play around until you get a nice smooth rounded shape. There we go. Okay, let's carry on adding some more details. I'm going to go around that highlight there. That's another really good anchor point to work out from, because it's very clear where that is. Then some little details in there. And do you notice how I'm always drawing with like slightly broken lines? I'm never doing like a smooth, solid line. It's always little feathery taps and little bits of texture. Nothing's ever perfectly smooth, and even the rounded bit on the edge, I'm not going like one line, not lifting my pencil off. I'm using a broken line, keep lifting off. Best way to get more control. Okay, let's do this little bit here. You can see some drawers, I want to say, or is that a window or something? I'm not sure, but there's a line anyway that comes across. Looks like drawers to me. It doesn't really matter what it is, it's all very abstract. A little bit of a line just comes down there. And that looks like a little ceiling light maybe, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Maybe it's beams across the ceiling, actually. That would make more sense. Some little bits there. Can you see how when you really break it down, it's just like building a jigsaw puzzle together. One little piece at a time. It's hard to know which piece you need until you've built up a little bit more of it. And then you can see there's a gap and you know exactly what shape needs to go in there. That's why you've just got to start somewhere. And starting with the darkest bit is often the easiest way. Okay, so it's like a bit of a weird shape there. I'm just going to go around that. Again, not really too sure what that is, but it doesn't matter what it is as long as we can pick that out. I might have it all wrong, it might be outdoors this, but I'm pretty sure it looks like it's in somebody's house. Just going around some of these little shapes that I can see here, like there, it just sort of comes down like that. A little weird shape comes up there a little bit. So we've not got that much left to do here, just a few more little bits. Gonna just fill in this little bit here. It's a bit difficult to see what's going on, but you can definitely still pick out some shapes. Just the general area where they are. Like a little bit of a weird oblong square shape there. And you see what I mean in that it's quite forgiving. You don't need to get everything absolutely spot on. If you picked this bauble up and put it in a different room, it'd look totally different. So there's no rule to say that it needs to look exactly like the picture. Even if you moved it a little bit to the left, it'd look totally different. So as long as we've got everything in generally the right place, it's gonna look absolutely fine. Okay, I think I've done that. Maybe a little bit low there, but that's fine. I'm not too bothered. Okay, I'm pretty pleased with that. I feel like that's enough to get on with. We can start adding a bit of a base colour in now and then we can go from there. So it is a little bit tricky to figure out the undertone and what is the base colour that we should use for this red area of the bauble, but I'm going to stick with the beige red because if you look really, really closely, if you were to zoom in on this reference, especially if you look at these lighter bits where the highlights are, where it's sort of a bit lighter before it blends into the darker part, there's a bit of a pink, peachy pink undertone. And I'm going to add this pretty much everywhere apart from these highlights. I might be tempted to use a gel pen to add those little white bits back in. Taking this all over, but gradually just blending around these little highlights. But besides that, I'm not worrying at all. Just going over everything. There's definitely some orange undertones in there, but I think it'll be fine blending it over the pink. It'll just mean it'll all blend together really nicely. So I'm still not pressing super hard, just enough to get a nice, smooth, even coverage. You're better going over and over it a few times than pressing really hard to fill in all of these little grainy gaps, because if you're like me and you're using a slightly textured paper that has a little bit of a grain to it, you will need to just spend a little bit of time blending into those grains. You don't want to use a paper that's too smooth because you might struggle to build up layers on top of it. It won't matter too much for a subject like this, but if you were drawing animals or botanicals, you know, something that needs quite a lot of layers, it would be a bit more tricky. So personally, I do prefer slightly more textured paper, but not too textured for something like this because you do want it to have a smoothness to it. So it's just finding that happy medium. A lot of drawing is finding the happy medium, something that's not too much of one thing or the other. And everyone has their own personal preference. So you might be tempted to just go in really hard and just press all over, but you're better off spending a bit of time building this up. It's looking so much more like a bauble already. I do have to admit, I like a traditional Christmas colour scheme. I love red and gold. It just feels super Christmassy to me. Everyone has such different tastes in colour schemes. I like a lot of different styles. I love a woodland theme Christmas with all the little woodland animal baubles. I think they're so cute. And I like browns and you know, like brasses and stuff. Oh, there's just so many different options. But I do love a red Christmas. You could go wild drawing all sorts of different kinds of baubles. And I suppose this might help if you do want to try drawing one of your own baubles. This might help you to know the processes to use. But some baubles are so intricate, aren't they? They have all sorts of different patterns. At least this is just one smooth, solid shape. Last little bit. Making sure it's all nice and smooth. There's no massive white gaps. There we go. Right, so that gives us a really nice base to start working some darker and brighter reds on top of. So I don't think we'll go in with any oranges just yet. We'll start to build up some more of the depth first. I often like to add my more vibrant colours towards the end, or at least when I've got a little bit more structure built up. I think what I will do is go back to the middle Cadnium Red 217, and I'm going to start to build up some more depth. So do some little bits of shading and really start to bring all of these shapes together a bit more. So let's start here again, and I am just going to start to shade in with that middle Cadnium Red 217, if I haven't mentioned the number. Start building that up. Doing some shading. And again, I'm holding my pencil quite loosely because I want to be really gentle. And I don't want to press too hard. It's a nice mid-tone colour to use this. It's not too dark. It's dark enough that we can see a little bit of something. And then we can add some brighter colours in around it and then really darken it up afterwards. So it's just a starting point, and just going around that hand there. We'll start to see a little bit more of the shapes form now as we blend into them. So just do your best. The lighter your hand, the easier it is to do these subtle gradients between the different bits. So feel free to pop some music on or anything like that. I am going to be really focusing now on these shapes. As much as I try, I do struggle to do two things at once, so chatting while also focusing on what I'm doing, it can be a little bit of a struggle sometimes. So if at any point I need to give a little bit of a guidance, I will. But apart from that, I think it's really good practice to just use your own observation skills and see where to place this colour. Another tip I'll just give quickly is to draw in the direction of the thing that you're drawing. So if there's like a big section and it looks like it's going in this direction, then draw in that same direction. Just keep moving your pencil around, seeing what also feels most comfortable. So here, for example, it's definitely going in this direction, so I'm gonna move my pencil around and draw in that direction. I am keeping my pencil on the paper and doing like shading, mapping in all these shapes without lifting the pencil off too much. And like I said, I'm going in the direction of everything that I can see and making it look quite soft and all blended together. Focusing it more in some places where it's darker, creating little dark patches. But overall it does have this like really well blended look to it. It's definitely got a brighter like pinky red tone there, so I'm not going to go too far with that. And I am just going to keep moving my hand around and doing different bits just so that it doesn't get achy. We don't want any repetitive strain injury. So if you're the same and you need to just move around, just go to a different section. You don't want to work on the same bit for too long and get a sore wrist or a sore hand. When we get to this branch at the top, we're drawing between all of the branches, all these little dark shapes that you can see between the branches. So it's almost like a little upside down V shape between each one, like that, and it helps to make the lighter bits at the side stand out. So drawing in like a negative way to build up those branches. So this is where I am lifting the pencil off a little bit more to create those slightly sharper shapes in the branch. So always going in the direction of the little fir branch pieces. So a lot of this is just the illusion of detail. Drawing in really basic shapes and little bits of shading. We're not doing anything too detailed and crazy. Definitely need to just tone those down a little bit. We will be blending a brighter colour into these lighter areas. I think I just need to break that up a bit more though. Definitely needs to be a bit darker there. So as you can see, mine doesn't look exactly like the reference at all, but it is inspired by the reference and there's a lot of similarities, but there's definitely some differences. That's the beauty of art, it doesn't need to be exactly the same, because then you would just use the picture and you wouldn't bother having a piece of art created from it. That's the beauty, it can be slightly different. It's your interpretation of the reference that you're using. I'm just going to blend a little bit over that middle section very lightly. But like I said, we definitely need like a brighter red colour to make these different areas pop. I blend a little bit on the edges, but it's a lot lighter in the middle where that light source is there, so It's going to gradually fade that out into the lighter pink. So these little subtle differences, little nuances, being able to spot them, which takes practice. The more experienced you become, the more that you spot, and then the longer your drawings take. But they do look more realistic and believable. And you might find that you need a little bit of a break from this. You might want to go and grab yourself a drink, have a walk round, and then come back to it with some slightly fresher eyes. Whatever helps you. There's no rules. You don't have to sit here for the solid amount of time that this video is. Have a little bit of a break. Come back to it on a different day if you want to. So I'm just filling in the last little bits of the jigsaw. And I'm really pleased with how this is all coming together. Definitely need to darken up around the hand, which I still haven't decided how much of that I'm going to add, but I suppose we could add a little bit of it, couldn't we? Drawing hands is not something that I enjoy. I don't really like drawing people. It's not something that I do that much anymore. I used to draw people a lot, but as soon as I started drawing animals, I was like, yeah, this is for me. I much prefer that. I do like drawing human eyes though, I must admit. Maybe we'll do a human eye tutorial at some point if anyone's interested in that, because I must admit I do enjoy drawing any type of eyes. Okay, so my hand is looking a little bit worse for wear, to be honest. Just going to blend a little bit shading over it so that it's not so strong. Looks better. I mean, you can't really tell that it's a hand unless you're really like analysing it. So as long as it's just the general shape, then it's all good. It's almost like a little bit of a plant-like texture around here, like there's a plant or a tree or something, but it's not that obvious, so we're just going to draw what we can see. We're not going to try and make it up like there's a plant there. Darken that bit up a little bit more. Just drawing all the dark shapes that I can see. So I'm just mapping in this texture, doing little patches and drawing in the direction of all these little weird shapes that I can see. If anyone can decipher what's going on here, then let me know. I'd be interested to see what your interpretation of this is. Definitely needs to be a little bit darker here. I'm just going to fill in those gaps a little bit more. We will be using a darker colour. Okay, last little bit now. Again, it's a little bit textured, same as this, whatever it is. Might even be another branch on the Christmas tree. I feel like some of you might be able to tell what it is and be like screaming at me like, it's this? How can you not see? It's amazing what some people can see that others can't, or it's just like how your brain works, isn't it? Like, we'll watch the 1% show sometimes, which has questions that only like 1% of people know the answer to. A lot of them are like puzzles and patterns or maths questions or just things like that. And sometimes like one person might get something straight away but not be able to get the next question, and someone else might get it straight away. It really is all just about how your brain works and what your strengths are. Some people can observe better than others, but it's definitely like a muscle. It's something that you can train if you just do more of it. That's why I encourage you to try these things, even if you feel like you're not at the level yet to draw something like this. It's all good practice for improving your observational skills. Let's do a little bit of a darker line on the edge. Okay, I feel like that looks pretty good if you ask me. Okay, so now I'm going to use light Cadnium Red 117 for these really vibrant red, almost orange toned areas. So we've got the pink undertone, which I think adds to the pink elements of it, but there's definitely some orange, some vibrant orange. So I think this layered on top of the pink will work really nicely because we'll have a little bit of both then. So if you don't have this, just use a bright red orange colour, or if you have to use one that's got a little bit more pink in it, then you can do. It doesn't matter too much, but I think this will be perfect. So I'm just blending this anywhere that's got that lovely vibrant red colour, blending it in. And I'm going to be careful because I don't want to lose the depth. I want to be able to see where all these little details are, so that when I go over it with a darker colour, I'm not drawing it from scratch again. I can still see what's going on. So being quite light, we could always add a bit more later on. But I just want that nice blend of the vibrant orange tone through there. And I am going to blend this through these darker areas as well a little bit, because it helps to create that richness. Adds a little bit of an extra colour. Makes it look a bit less flat. So just really take your time with this, you don't need to rush. The best way to blend is to just take your time, keep going over things and not rush your way through. Definitely a bit of a lighter orange colour there, so I'm just going to like blend that out a little bit, leave it a bit lighter, and then when we add the orange colour on it'll look a bit more reflective. Just going to bring that up there a little bit as well to create a bit of a warm red glow. Just around that gold bit. Again, it is a little bit easier if you do it in the direction of the details that you're filling in. See how that's bringing it all together and it's starting to look smoother now and less like it's a bit random. All looks like it's part of the bauble. Like a solid piece rather than all separate different things. So just spending a bit of time blending that in. Going around this little highlight. Blend it in there. I feel like I've definitely missed some detail in there. I might need to go back to the darker red colour afterwards, but that's fine. It's always easier to add more, like I said. Okay, so my hand has disappeared a little bit, but that's fine. Didn't particularly like the hand detail too much anyway in mine. Like I said, we are going to darken it up a bit more, so we're going to be adding some of this depth back in. Thankfully we can still see the details enough to go back over it shortly. Okay, that will do for now. And I think before I go in with the darker colour, I want to add a little bit of an orange into the outside bits to add that nice orange glow. So I'm going to use a lighter orange colour. I'm going to stick with my cadmium colour family, and I'm going to use the Cadnium Orange 111. So any light orange colour that you've got. And I'm going to start to work this into these outside areas mostly, and anywhere else that needs a little bit of orange. Gives it that nice orange glow. Went a bit too far out there. And blend it inwards a little bit as well. I add a little bit up here. A little bit there. Anywhere that's got that warm orange glow, might be tempted. Just add the tiniest little bit into the hoop and the golder area. Although I probably won't do all too much. No, I think that's fine. That looks good. So just before I move on to the darker colour that we're going to add, I'm going to use a little bit more of my middle Cadnium Red 217. Just where I've missed a little bit of depth and detail in there. Just darkening it up a tiny bit more. Okay, so the colour that I'm going to use to darken it all up is Red Violet 194. Like I said earlier, there's definitely some purple tones in this bauble, and that's what's going to give it some depth. Like if you look in these really dark bits, it's definitely a little hint of purple, and because this has got some red in it, it's going to tone really nicely with all of these reds. So just use a darker purpley red colour, whatever you have that's closest to this, and just going in, darkening everything up, pushing all of those darker bits back to create some more depth and dimension. And I think we'll probably end up needing a darker colour on top of this, but I think because we'll have the richness of all these different layers. If we add a really dark colour on top after this, it's going to look lovely and deep. So, like I said, my details are definitely not the same as the reference, but they're close enough. It still looks like a shiny, reflective bauble. And you might also be able to start adding the tiniest bit more pressure now, because we can afford to do that. We've got more layers, we've got everything in the right place. This is just about darkening it up now. You don't want to press too hard, but you can afford to add that little bit more pressure now. Okay, last little bit. Okay, I think we definitely need a little bit more of the light Cadnium Red 117. I feel like we could blend even more of a vibrant red colour. I might even be tempted to use another red as well. This tutorial is all about adding as much detail and layers and getting it right, compared to the autumn tutorial that I did where it was keeping it simple, using fewer colours to create something that still looks good. We're really turning it up a notch now, so if I want to add another red, I might be tempted to, but this is actually doing quite a lot, so we'll see how we get on with this. Sometimes you just need a few more layers of the same colours that you've already used. It really is dependent on what your drawing is missing. And again, you can apply that little bit more pressure with this even now. You can afford to get away with it. So I'm really looking at that reference, seeing which bits need some extra vibrant red. Just adding it accordingly. Definitely a bit more through the middle. I do apologise if my voice is sounding a little bit husky as well. I've still got a bit of a cold. I've had it for the past month nearly now. It's driving me nuts. We might not need another red, that's looking pretty good. And do you see how mine is nowhere near as detailed as the reference, but it still looks good. It's got the illusion of being detailed, and especially when we add some darker colours to deepen up these bits, it's going to have lovely contrasting values. And it doesn't really need to be that detailed. As long as you've got a little bit of detail, it's all good. So now I'm a bit torn whether to add some dark sepia, so that really dark brown grey colour that we've used in the autumn video, or whether to just go straight to black. I think what I'll do, I'll go straight to black, 199, and if we find we need a colour to create a bit more of a gradient, we can add the dark sepia in after that. So yeah, black 199, I'm just going to start to darken everything up with this. Going to be very subtle, I don't want to add too much. I'm just going to blend it over the really dark parts. Really lightly. And get that extra layer of depth. And because we've got all those lovely rich colours underneath, it won't look flat because we're technically blending it with other colours. I never like to use black on its own because it does look really flat. You need to have lots of lovely rich colours underneath it to take the edge off a little bit. So this has the potential to be so much darker. And you might have been tempted to stop at the previous layer, but it needs that little bit more depth. Stronger values to create more dimension. Like I said, I'm not going to go too crazy with the black. You can go too far quite easily. I don't think we're going to need the dark sepia. I've got a feeling this would be alright. But we'll see how we get on. As long as we're really gentle with it and really soft and careful. And I am holding my pencil a little bit closer to the end now for a bit more precision. But if I'm trying to be a bit lighter for a bigger area, then I am holding it a bit further up. A little bit there. So you do need to be so careful with the black because you don't want to ruin all of the hard work that you've already done. You don't want to add too much and make it really dark. I mean, personally, I like my drawings to be a little bit lighter. Don't like to add too many darker colours and make it look moody. I like it to have a lightness. But you do need the black, the darker colours to create those values, otherwise it does still look flat and boring. We don't want our drawings to look boring. not going to add too much on this left hand side, it's a little bit lighter, but I am going to add a few little bits. Definitely going to add some here. I think we might end up needing a bit more of that mid-tone red, that middle cadmium red after this, but we'll add the black first and then we can fill in the gaps with the other colours, anything else that we need to add. But you see how that's just transformed it? It's really brought this bauble to life, even though it's not alive, it's an inanimate object, it's brought it to life. It's made it look much more realistic. It's made all those colours pop. It looks a lot less flat, a lot more multi-dimensional. I'm going to just add some more little bits here. I think this is definitely where we need some more of that other red colour. I'll add a few more bits down here. Don't want to add too much on this left side, like I said, but just a few more little bits, I think. There. That's looking so good. I'm really pleased with that. A few more bits there. Okay, let's add a little bit more of the middle cadmium red 217. Just places like around here, I feel like I could use a little bit more of this. You can just add an extra little bit of detail with some of those mid-tones, so I think I could definitely darken the edges of this bit here, whatever it is. Still want it to look like there's a light source there, so just blending that in from the edges, and then it's a bit lighter in the middle. Definitely going to add a little bit more of this round here. A little bit more through there. A little bit more there. And again, I am just pressing that a little tiny bit harder, just to get a smoother blend, get a little bit more pigment down. We can afford to do that now. Still, you don't want to press like ridiculously hard. You don't want your drawing to look really overly waxy. It doesn't need to. You will have a little bit of a burnish, a little bit of a wax, shiny look to it. It also depends on which coloured pencils you're using. These are oil based, so they're not super waxy naturally, whereas Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils, they're wax based, so they are going to look more waxy, but if you're using these, they shouldn't look too shiny if you don't press too hard. Definitely need a little bit more of this down here. Trying not to dull down the highlighted areas too much, because we still do want some lighter bits to make this look multi-dimensional and have those lighter and darker values that contrast with one another. So I want to spend a few more minutes just blending it all a little bit better. A little bit more down here. It's amazing how many layers you can get with just a standard sketchbook, nothing fancy. Might add a little bit more of the black 199. I've missed that little circular shape just in there. Might add a few more little details. It's definitely getting a bit closer to the limit of how many layers that I can add now. Because while this paper is good, like I said, there's a limit to how much you can add. Which is why we've started with much lighter layers. It's always important, but especially when you're using slightly lower quality paper like this. Using a light hand is a must. Just add in some extra little details there. I might be tempted to add a little bit more of the Red Violet 194 for a little bit more of that purple tone. Just to blend anything in that needs blending. It's not the most pigmented colour in the world, this, I don't find. It doesn't go on super strong. It's a nice subtle colour just to bring different areas together. I think it's definitely best using this in this darker area. And it really is just about keep going back and adding all these different layers, even though you feel like you've already added that colour, surely that's that. You can put that colour away now, but no, you just need to keep going back and adding more and more. I might add a little bit more of the light Cadnium Red 117. I feel like I need a little bit more of that just around here. Might just blend that a little bit further down. And I might add a little bit more of that Cadnium Orange 111 just around the edges so that it's not grainy. Just again, adding that tiny bit more pressure. Also, just going to clean it up a little bit. Managed to smudge it a tad. Might add a little bit more into the hoop. I feel like that looks a little bit flat now that we've got this really rich, deep bauble. Let's add a little bit more of the Burnt Umber 280, the dark brown. Just going to deepen that up a little bit more, press a tiny bit harder. That looks better already. And that's what I mean when I say you need something to compare a section to. So before, when I didn't have anything to compare the top bit to, it was really light, but it looked fine. But when you've got a really vibrant section next to it, it looks a lot lighter. So you just need that extra little bit of depth so it all works with one another. A little bit more detail. A little bit more at the top. A little bit more in there. Okay, and then I'm going to add this little bit of lighting into the bauble there using a white gel pen. So this is the Jelly Roll white gel pen in number 8. Got these from Amazon, super cheap and really good for drawing on top of coloured pencils. You do have to give them a little bit of a dab sometimes to get them to work, but I'm just going to create this little ring of lights using the gel pen. Just the easiest way to add this in. And I'm also going to add that little bit in this circle here, this little shape, 2 little dots there. And is there anywhere else that needs a little bit of a highlight? Maybe here, there's like a few little lighter bits. And if they're too strong, you can just tap them with your finger a little bit to tone them down. There's like a few little highlights at the top that I might add in. A little bit there. Again, just tone that down. You can always add a bit of coloured pencil on top of it to make it less white. Sometimes you've got a highlight but it's got like a bit of an orange tone to it, or you know, it's not bright white. So I probably will add a little bit of something on top. But yeah, anywhere you want to pick out any highlights, I might just go over that a little bit more. Go, let that dry. Then at this point it's totally subjective to your drawing how much you feel like you need to do. I might add a little bit more of my light cadmium red 117 and just fill in anywhere that looks a little bit sparse. You could go on forever and a day correcting it, but my biggest piece of advice is to come back to it on a fresh day. See if there's anything that you've missed or that you're seeing with different eyes. Definitely need some fresh eyes to truly finish it off and make it as good as you possibly can. I'm going to go around these a little bit, and I will tone those down a bit with some of the lighter orange in a little bit. I think I might need a bit more detail in there as well. Okay. I'm going to use a bit of my Cadnium Orange 111. Just going to go over these a little bit. Any extra little bits. Just going to add a tiny bit more black 199 just into this bottom area. I was just filming and my camera battery cut out. I think I need to have it on a stronger charge as I'm filming. Just getting used to this different camera. I usually use my Canon M100, but I'm using my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 for this, and I'm not used to using it for tutorials much yet, so hopefully the quality's fine and the microphone's alright for this. Add a little bit more around here. Okay, I'm not going to go too much further because honestly I'll be here all night and it's going very, very dark outside now, which means the lighting isn't going to be the best and might be a really good idea for me to stop soon anyway. Well, this video might end up being about 3 hours long. Just adding a little bit more of the Cadnium Orange 111 just over these little white bits. Might add a bit around there as well. Maybe a little bit over these just so that they're not so harsh. Okay, calling it done. We're doing it. Putting the pencils down. So I really hope you've enjoyed joining me for this tutorial. Do feel free to send me your pictures of your work either by email or on social media, or tag me on Instagram or Facebook. I also have a YouTube community Facebook group if you would like to post anything on there. I'll link everything down below, and I really hope you've enjoyed this one. You're feeling nice and festive now. I am carrying on this tutorial on Patreon. I'm doing a penguin and a sausage dog with a little Christmas hat on, so if that sounds like something you'd like to do, then head over to my Patreon. So you can access those on any tier, including the fundamentals, which is £5 a month. So if you're looking for something to do over that festive week where you don't know what day it is, then feel free to join me over there. I'd love to have you. But yeah, apart from that, that is the tutorial finished. So I really hope you enjoyed it. I'd love it if you gave this video a like if you did, because it really helps my channel out. Subscribe to see more tutorials and videos like this, and I shall see you in the next one. So have a wonderful Christmas, and bye for now.